Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just another tinfoil hat. Welcome to my Friday night Screen Screams review, where I will discuss what spooky movie has captured my attention, spoiler free, of course. Now, tonight, a while ago I mentioned that a few movies that I've been really looking forward to in the past, like recent months, have really let me down. And there's one thing that I know every time I can make a regrettable choice on film, there is one surefire way, one thing I know to do that will cheer me up, not let me down, and spook me, and that is to pull up a John Carpenter movie. So today we will be reviewing John Carpenter's The Fog. I'm pretty sure the only Carpenter film I've reviewed on here so far has been In the Mouth of Madness, which may be my favorite one. It's it's a very tough race, I'll be honest. But the truth is I'm trying to space them out a little bit. I have not seen one yet that has disappointed me. I mean, The Thing, Halloween, even Christine, and I have to admit, even as a Stephen King fan, I was kind of expecting to be disappointed by Christine because truthfully, how scary can you make an evil car? But no, it was great. I loved it. So today, we will be discussing John Carpenter's 1980 film, The Fog, not to be confused with the 2005 remake, The Fog, or speaking of Stephen King, also not to be confused with The Mist. Now, The Fog takes place in Northern California, and speaking of King, it's really cool to me because the setting actually feels like one of King's short story settings. It feels almost like a Maine coast, but it is Northern California, the small town of Antonio Bay. And it opens with a scene that I absolutely adore, a good old-fashioned campfire ghost story. Old Mr. Moshin, shout out Arthur Moshin of the Great God Pan fame, gotta love a weird fiction Easter egg, is telling the story of a ghost ship to a group of astonished kids. He said that 100 years ago, a clipper ship crashed on this very stretch of coastline on some rocks after mistaking a campfire, just like this one, for a lighthouse. We then go to the small church of Antonio Bay, where John Carpenter actually makes a brief appearance as the handyman guy assistant named Bennett, and then are introduced to Father Malone, who seriously looks like an Edgar Allan Poe reenactor and has the aura of gloom to match. As soon as the handyman leaves, a chunk of wall falls out of the old church, revealing an ancient tome, a journal written by Father Malone's own grandfather, who, get this, was also a priest. The radio comes on, and as we go over the town and see different areas of it, like these perfect little vignettes of this small coastal town, DJ Stevie Wayne, perched as we soon see in her station atop a lighthouse, which is mega cool, wishes Antonio Bay a happy centennial. Which reminds me, remember that ghost story about the ship that crashed into the rocks 100 years ago? I'm sure that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they're celebrating the centennial anniversary of Antonio Bay, right? Right? We're then introduced to carefree hitchhiker slash artist Elizabeth, perhaps unsurprisingly for a Carpenter movie, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who is picked up by Nick Castle, as stuff starts to go haywire around town, and not just around town, but also out on the water. The crew of a small trawler, the Seagrass, according to Dan the Weatherman, another radio personality, appears to have a fog bank heading towards it. Now, if you guessed that the fog bank contained what appeared to be the ghosts of sailors, which brutally murder the crew of the small trawler Seagrass, you have great intuition. And I have a second here to talk about what John Carpenter is probably most known for, aside from his fantastic music scores for his own movies, but also his amazing special effects. I mean, these guys are just sliced and diced so effectively. And meanwhile, this luminous fog is just this pervasive presence as much as any of the characters. Including, too, I love how the ghosts are portrayed, because very often in these scenes, you kind of just see them as these silhouettes, these very non-detailed sort of forms. And it just gives that air of ambiguity and spookiness to ghosts. Nick and Elizabeth find the trawler, the Seagrass, right as we cut to Father Malone telling town bigwig Kathy Williams, played by horror icon Janet Leigh, that the founding story of the town of Antonio Bay is a lie. The ship Elizabeth Dane was not some tragic accident, but was intentionally wrecked because it was carrying the wealthy Mr. Blake, a man unfortunately afflicted with leprosy, along with others afflicted also with the terrible disease. They were planning on setting up a colony near the settlement of people, which then eventually became Antonio Bay, so the ship was wrecked and then plundered. With the gold, the 6 conspirators who had sunk the Elizabeth Dane built Antonio Bay and even that old church. While this is being revealed, Nick and Elizabeth find a very super dead body in the seagrass. We then cut to DJ Stevie Wayne, whose son, Andy, had previously found a piece of driftwood which read simply Dane. She brought it with her to the station, and suddenly it begins leaking seawater over all of her tapes. Then she looks over and sees that the name Dane has been changed to Six Must Die, as the tape that she had going starts spouting ominous warnings before everything bursts into flames. She douses the flames, the driftwood is back to saying Dane, and somehow her tapes are unharmed. Now we catch up again with Nick and Elizabeth at the local morgue, where one of my favorite scenes in the movie happens. I love when scenes like this are done well, where the viewer is seeing something that the character is not. And this one was just fantastic. Behind Elizabeth's back, as she stands alone in the morgue, the corpse from the seagrass rises, takes a scalpel, and advances towards her, leaving a message etched in the floor, a simple 3, before collapsing back into death. Now, in spite of all of this madness going on, the disturbances over town, glass just ridiculously exploding for apparently no reason, electrical devices malfunctioning, and also the fact that, hey, people are being murdered by sailor ghosts, the show must go on, right? Although Chairlady Kathy Williams' husband is missing, he was one of the unfortunate souls on the seagrass, you can't keep a good centennial down. And that's exactly what they do. You know, the town's founders murdered a bunch of people back in the day to found said town, but hey, we already ordered the cake. And so, as can be expected, the centennial is when all hell really breaks loose in Antonio Bay. Now, I truly, truly love this movie. It moves really fast. And the reason it moves so fast is because we have these different groups of characters that they're all kind of woven in the same narrative, and it does not feel disjointed. Every single check in with the characters is like a perfect foil for what's going on with the other characters at the same time. Also, the big reveal for the motive of the angry ghosts, occurring at roughly the halfway point in the movie, just gives such gravity to the film. It's all about corruption as the basis of this quaint small town, and this corruption comes back with a vengeance, visiting their motive upon the people who are just in an absolute loss of how to deal with it. What I especially love, and I know I've mentioned this before, is that it seems like a lot of filmmakers shy away from just making good old fashioned ghost stories, like ghosts aren't scary enough or something. And I have beef with that because ghosts are plenty scary. But especially in this film, they embody more than just, oh, it's a ghost. The ghost is not like just its presence. That's not the only thing that is a threat. It seems like they're part of this universal force, capable of bending reality to its whims and riding on that luminescent fog. Coincidence seems to conform to the desires of this haunting, sending the walls of the church crackling down to reveal a journal, causing the driftwood to wash up on the shore. And it's these aspects of the haunting, these almost universal or world altering aspects, that seem to be the real threat in this. Yes, the sailor ghosts are scary. They are chopping people up left and right with hooks and things that look like scythes. But to me, it's all of these almost coincidental forces that just make the people of Antonio Bay seem like they're absolutely hemmed in this giant town shaped cage. Well, if you have seen this movie, feel free to offer your opinion in the comments below. And if you haven't, give it a watch, especially if you like John Carpenter. Also, in the comments below, what is your favorite John Carpenter movie? Let me see if I have seen it. If you want to hear part 2 of this movie where I discuss spoilers to the end of the film, please check out my Patreon. If you like listening to people talk about movies and around spoilers, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and be sure to ring that bell to keep up with my latest videos, which also include those of the paranormal variety. For today, I am Zelia Edgar, signing off.